Hey guys, Windsor here, and welcome to another episode of the Groove Guru podcast. And this one's another solo cast, and it's around the topic of how I prepare for a tour. And this one's quite relevant because at the time of recording this, I'm in the process of preparing for a Hugh Cornwell band tour I'm doing in Scandinavia. A few days from now, and it's a bunch of shows alongside the Undertones, a band we've worked with quite a lot in recent months. And I've just done a practice session earlier today. I was running through 20 Strangler songs, a bunch of repertoire for the Scandinavia dates, and also for some longer sets that we're going to be doing in the UK and EU. And I'm going to run through a process that works for me in preparing for a tour. And these points obviously can be applied to you if you're a musician. And if you're not a musician, they can still be applied to preparing for, it could be a presentation or a talk you're going to give at work, etc. And I think you'll find that there'll be some useful takeaways, whoever you are, from this. The first point I want to cover is preparation is key. And why? Why is preparation key? You know, as a musician, when you're on tour, there's generally much less, if any, time to practice your instrument. Sure, you could do warm-ups here and there, but it's a bit like an athlete. Okay, so if you're an athlete and you're preparing for a sporting event, all right, the time to train is not at the event. It's the time leading up to it. And, I'm not using that example to refer to music being a competition, but that importance of preparation. Okay, so preparation is key to show up being that quality performer that you are, can be to that next level. So really, preparation is key. And the next thing is the attitude. Having the best attitude as well as a structure and a methodology is something that can really assist you in getting the best possible results. Again, the athlete example, another way of thinking about that is the best athletes, if you look at the 100-meter sprint, for example, there's usually fractions of seconds between the athlete that gets first place, second place, third place. So all those athletes at that level, they've got a very similar level of athletic performance and physical performance, and often that difference that can really make a huge difference to being the athlete who wins or the you that shows up at the very best of your ability is that mindset and attitude, and just having certain levels of clarity there can make a big difference. And just prefacing that, another key component about that is, just focusing your mind to where you want. And one of the foundations that I find can really assist in starting a new project is an attitude of gratitude, like being grateful. Like if you're a professional musician in the process of doing a tour, or it might be your first tour. If you're watching this, you might be wondering, okay, I've got a tour. What's a good way, a useful way to prepare for that and go through that process? And learning from someone that's done a bunch of tours, that attitude can be key. Like, wow, I have the opportunity of working as a professional musician. That's pretty cool. There's a lot of aspiring musicians who want to do music professionally who haven't done it yet, and you certainly can. And, just to remind yourself, yeah, thank you, I get a chance to do professionally what I love to do. And that perspective of that you get to do that feeling of gratitude can really assist you starting the project out on a positive note. And when you are with other people, having a positive attitude and bringing that to the table is something that's pretty palpable. Now, again, it's not just all attitude and think positive thoughts. But part of that is a clear understanding of a process, and it's about finding what works for you, finding a process that works for you, and that relates to the how of doing it. And I want to lay out a process that works for me that I've been using for the current upcoming tour with the Hugh Cornwell band, and also how I've used that process with other work that I've done. So the first point is clarity in this process, which is, clarification of the repertoire. And if you're touring with a band artist, you've got a tour booked, and you're leading up to that, then the chances are that the material already exists. Creating the material from scratch is another matter, another podcast. The focus here is practicing material that's pre-existing. So clarifying the repertoire, one would be getting a list of reference tracks from the band artist. Like, for example, with Hugh, I've been working with him for a few years, and for the work that we do, the tour, he's the one that chooses the repertoire. So I've been working with Hugh for a while, and I've got a list of the tunes, and I have those. And if you're new to an artist, or it's a completely new artist that you haven't worked for, then so checking out those original reference recordings, the album tracks, is a great first point. And also referencing any live tracks that the band artists have performed. Like, often arrangements live are different from what happens on the studio record. Like, if the studio album's got a fade out in one of the tracks, then usually there's some kind of ending that's been made, instead of just doing like manual fade out, So going on YouTube and checking out any live albums the band and artist have done is very useful. And if you've been working with a band or artist for a while, then you've probably got your own reference tracks. It could be a gig recording or recording of a rehearsal that you can check out. So that's it. So getting a list of the tracks is key. Then the second part, listen to the material. And you want to be as familiar as possible with the music and your part and your ability to play it. And if you're a musical director in the project, then really being familiar with the material so you can explain and direct people as appropriate. That's key. And when you're learning a set of songs, then something that can work amazing, some do this, some don't, I do, it's creating charts or just writing out the details of the music. And it could be just writing out the form, the general shape. Okay, so intro, verse, chorus, bridge, etc. That helps you internalize the music. And after that, then more detailed charts, like writing out the riff or any key figures, or even doing transcriptions of the music can really work well. And again, if you've got a lot of music to learn, then just the act of writing it out for you to make that chart, you can find that you will internalize, at least conceptually, so much of it that when you then go to practice on your instrument, it can really be, wow, quite a reduction in time required. Like, I remember writing out certain songs that I've had to perform, and by the time that I've written out a chart, I can just go to my instrument and play it, and it's pretty much in there. So creating charts and transcriptions, that's a definite thing I want to point you to. And when you've got a clear idea of the music, you've listened to it and you've charted it, then we're at the level of solo or individual practice, which, as a methodology, then you've got the music, you've got a chart, you play and you practice with the chart repeatedly until you can play the music great. And some gigs allow you to have charts on the gig. Some gigs, that's not the thing to do. Some people call it cheating if you've got a chart. But the point being is, to get to the point where you can play the music and know you're playing it right without the chart, then it's practicing playing it without the chart is the key. So as part of my process, I usually have a chart in music and I practice with the chart. And then once I know that I'm getting all the details as I want them to be, then I practice without the chart until I don't need it and I know that I'm doing it right. Another thing you can do is then play the music just being with your instrument. And this is a great way to prove to yourself that you know the music inside out. And something that one of my tutors taught me a few years ago that I still apply is for me to know that I really know the set inside out. One thing I like to do is have a list of the songs and a list of tempos, and I practice with a metronome, just me and my instrument. It could be drums, singing, samples, and I can play all of the music and hear all of the bits in my head, knowing all the arrangements, etc. And when I get to that level, I know I can do it. And it's a great way to build confidence and lead to you showing up to rehearsals with other musicians from that confident space. It really makes a huge difference. And that leads on to the next part, which is after you've practiced individually, then usually there's some kind of rehearsal. And a great thing to keep in mind about that is that's not where you learn the songs. It's more about you learning finer details. So a good key is to remember rehearsal with the band is for you to practice what you've already practiced. Okay? Because rehearsal takes time and money for rehearsal rooms, etc. And that's part of it. But when you can show up knowing that you know the music, and when everyone else has done their homework, then again you can refine those smaller details. And that's usually the level of professional acts. Okay? Like I was chatting with Pete Ray Biggin on the podcast, and he was giving the example of with Level 42, he shows up and the band, they all know it and they usually run the set once and any new bits, and if they need to do it once more then they do it, but most often that's enough. And similar thing with Hugh Cornwell, if I've not played together for a while, we turn up and we play the set, and it may have been a few months, but yeah, it's all there, and then we can work on any other details we want. And another key, again, when I was chatting with Pete Ray Biggin on the podcast, this one came up, which was that make rehearsal easy, so that your individual practice, what you've practiced, you are at a level that when you come to the table that it's easy to do. Okay, you don't have any self-doubt in your mind, you just know that you can turn up and nail it. And again, it can take a while to get to that level of showing up in that way, but it's certainly possible, and from my experience makes a huge difference and makes the project much more enjoyable, and the process much more enjoyable. So that's mostly applied to recapping on an existing project. So when I play with Hugh Cornwell, I've played that repertoire quite a lot. So these days it's mainly recap on things we've already done with occasional new pieces of music to learn. And even though I've played a lot of that music before, there's still an opportunity to, take that, some aspect of what I'm doing to the next level. It could be just making, my tempo and groove feel even better, enhancing the sound, being more relaxed when I play. So there's always that opportunity to level up, no matter how many times you've played something. And again, not saying that you need to, but there is that opportunity. Now, if it's a completely new project, like a band or artist that you've never worked with before, it could even be your first tour, then an example of that from recent months was when I played with Wishbone Ash, a classic rock band, and their drummer wasn't available for some shows and there was a show in Bilbao, Spain, and I was asked to do the show, and very grateful I didn't have to audition for it. I was recommended and was asked to do the show. So here I am with this new band that I've never played with, that I haven't really heard the material that much before the rehearsal, and that band usually don't rehearse. And for this gig, we had a few days of rehearsal, which for that band is a bit of a luxury. It was funny, is that when I turned up to the rehearsal before the show in Bilbao, Spain, the guitar player, Mark, like joked. He was like, wow, this is the first time I've rehearsed with the band in years since joining them. And funnily enough, it was at the same rehearsal room as well. But the point was, I had to turn up and for all of my parts to be there and ready to, boom, just do it and play the set. And as it worked out, it turned out really, really good. It's like, wow, I had done my practice and my homework, and everyone was like, wow, this is going to work. Great. And the show went great. And for that one, I had rehearsals, and then afterwards there was a few gigs on their UK tour I was asked to do, and for that it was me turning up to the gig and just doing the gig. And again, the point is, what allowed me to do that was a few things. You know, one, knowing that I could, and two, having a methodology like I've just set out. You know, get the repertoire, you know, get the list of songs, listen to it, make charts, practice. And it can be challenging to do that when you do work like that, it gives you a certain confidence and a knowing that you can do it. And if there's someone listening to this, that if you have got a new opportunity and you've not, say, done a tour before, or you're in a position of actually being asked to turn up and just do the rehearsal and it be great first time, then, you know, you can do it. You know, if I can do this kind of thing, then you can too. Now, in the actual process of practicing in prep, because this is mainly focused on instrumental practice, some key things are eliminate distractions, because really focus is key. And you want it to be so it's, when you're practicing, it's just you and your instrument and the music. So one of the things that makes the biggest difference, I find, is, you know, no phone. Like, turn your phone off, turn your notifications off. At least, you know, if you're using your phone sometimes to reference music or a metronome app on it, which I sometimes do, then my phone's on airplane mode, because to really do the quality practice, it needs to be just that sustained focus. Because when you do the repetitions, that's how you develop memory. It's literally by repeating that you form new neural connections that way. So getting rid of the phone when you're practicing it is huge. And another interesting one was that to practice well, practice like a robot. Now, I don't mean being stiff and have no feel, but more like, you know, being mechanical and have a routine. And there's power in that. And I first learned that I remember when I was at high school and I was studying for some exams. You know, usually at school, you know, I got pretty good grades and it came pretty easy to me that way. And I didn't always have a set way that I would study for exams. But I remember this one time that I decided, okay, I've got some exams coming up, so I'm going to every night study for half an hour. So I would routinely read my notes. And I just kind of, you know, commanded myself to go through the motions and just do the reading each night. And so I did that for the few weeks before the exams, and the results for my exams were like, wow, like markedly better. And I was surprised that, wow, actually I got 95% for that one, or, you know, like the results were, you know, consistently in that high grade ballpark. And the thing that I had done that contributed to that was consistent studying, consistent prep. And for this, it's consistent practice. So, you know, just do what it takes for you to get to the point that you know that you're doing it right. And again, repetition is key. And the mind, it's like a computer, because we are programmable. Okay. And basically, without going into details on that, you can program your mind with the stuff that you want. So it's what we're talking about now is programming your mind with the parts, and programming your body so that ultimately you develop things in muscle memory so that your body remembers it, so that you don't have to remember it up here all the time. So that's key. And when you're practicing, reflect on your practice, because sometimes when you are playing your instrument and really, really into it, it can be really useful to elevate your perspective that way. I talk about this in my first solo cast, and that practical process that really helps with it is recording yourself. So if you can put a mic in the room when you're practicing, or if you can record into your computer and listen back, that reflection is certainly key in that. And even if you record rehearsals and record shows, just to listen back to hear how it actually sounds can be really helpful. And you can get to the process that you don't need to do that all the time, though. When you're learning new things and there's a lot to take on board, just having that reference point can be really useful. And keep leveling up. Recently, when I was working on some repertoire with Hugh Cornwell band shows, like I've played a lot of these songs, probably hundreds of times in total. Like a lot more in practice than at the shows. And I still find ways that I can level up my playing. And it could be something as simple as just making my timing even better, like physically relaxing more and more. And the point is, it's no matter how much you've done something, there's always something you can do to take your performance of that to the next level. So that always leveling up is useful to keep in mind. Now, a few other points when it comes to, preparing your musical performance. And the first one is getting your equipment right, making your instrument your ally, so that one, you can just play what you can play without your instrument getting in the way. And there's a funny infographic I saw at a studio I was at a while ago, and it's the beginner roadie's toolbox. Okay, it consists of two things: gaffer tape and WD-40. And the infographic, we'll see if we can put it on the screen. It's if you're watching, it's does it move? Yes. Should it move? Yeah. It's fine. So does it move? Yes. Should it move? No. Use gaffer tape. Then the other one was does it move? No. Should it move? No. That's fine. Does it move? No. Should it move? Yes. Use WD-40. The point is, it's do what it takes here to, make sure your equipment is in the A1 condition, that it's all works perfectly, and make your rig bulletproof. Is your rig bulletproof? Yes. Great. Is your rig bulletproof? No. Man. Make it bulletproof. Do what it takes. Okay. And, other things, if you're on a tour, packing, sometimes having a packing checklist can be time saving as well. And, preparing things to do when you're traveling on the road, books, movies, whatever you want to get into, podcasts, preparing that in advance can be useful as well. And another thing, and this can be a bit more granular than some people think, but it gets to something I learned as a useful or a really interesting productivity guru, David Allen, he's got a great book, Getting Things Done. And in that, he talks of roles and responsibilities and areas of focus. And it's a bit more of an elevated perspective. And it can be useful to do an inventory of that, just to see what shows up for you and show, oh, that's something else I could be doing as well. And so on the Hugh Cornwell gig, for example, my roles and responsibilities, it's pretty much me just playing music. So that's, drumming, sampling, singing, a bit of kit setup and tuning. I still do that, knowing arrangements inside out. So just seeing that and externalizing that, or at least thinking about it, can be really useful. And, there's other things that, you can have as a professional musician. Social media is is one. Staying up to date with new developments with your instrument is another one. If you're in another role, like if you're a tour manager, there's different roles and responsibilities there, like, logistics, planning, communicating with venues. It could be booking the tour in the first place. So just having that checklist externally can be useful. And, another one, it's your ability to make people feel comfortable. This came up in a conversation with Darby Todd recently on episode 11 of GGP, and that being confident and comfortable in your own abilities can really rub off. And again, that's, preparation is key. And, some people say be over prepared for rehearsal. And again, it's about you showing up at the best of your ability. And, working with people, another simple thing can be giving genuine compliments. Like, if you guys play a great show, just saying that. And if you're really acing new material and getting it together, giving compliments where compliments are due. And it may seem obvious, but it's sometimes those obvious things are the keys that we can really double down on and, take things to that next level. And, raising the significance of other people. When you raise the significance of other people, that's a great way of you getting all the significance that you want as well. And again, not just giving compliments, but being willing to give honest feedback as well. If there's something that is working, great. If there's something that's not working, then, presenting that and presenting solutions. Again, that's another quality that can lead to, you being seen as even more trustworthy in what you do and reliable and someone that people want to work with. All right. Now, some common questions I have been asked by some of my students in the past, and it's about confidence and dealing with anxiety, and how do you develop more confidence as a musician? And there's a few different reference points that you can have in your mental toolbox for that. And the first is that the more you show up and perform well, the more reference points you've got for that. Like, it can be a list of previous successes. Like, I know I've done a bunch of tours and sessions. I've done what's required and it worked out great. And I've got that in the back of my mind, and that assists with the confidence that the next one I'm asked to do, I can do great with that also. And another point is, if you don't have confidence with something, it's not about feeling confident first, which is kind of the antithesis of what I just said, though it's seeing that confidence comes as a byproduct of you practicing. And if you want to feel confident about your performance before you've performed, that's going about it backwards in a way. Because if you're doing something that's you're brand new to, like, for example, if you're a musician listening, watching this, that's about to do your first tour, and you've not done one before, and you want to feel confident about doing your first tour, then you won't feel confident about having done your first tour until you've already experienced that. And yeah, you can have confidence of having a strategy to prepare for it, like I've shared here. But if it's something you've not done yet, and this could be if you are new to, giving talks or public speaking or whatever it is, it can take a while to become confident at it. And it really is about doing the work. Like Nike would say, just do it. That doing the work, doing the repetitions at it until you get to that level of unconscious competence, that being in the zone where you can do it right, correctly, without having to think about it because you've done all the work beforehand. And I won't go into that here. In my Excelsior Basics drumming course, there's a whole section on practicing where I go into that in much more detail, and you can check that out via my website. It's windsordrums.com for that one. And related to that, how can I be more confident? It's that question of how do I deal with performance anxiety if it comes up. And that's probably one of the most common questions I've been asked when, coaching musicians, performers. And a few points here that, first of all, feeling anxiety is not bad. It's not a bad thing, and it's not something to hide from. It's a feeling. It's like energy in your body. And with feelings, I often think of feelings as the barometer of my thinking. Okay, like what I've been thinking about, because thought and feeling are connected. If you think of all the things that are going not so well in your life, that you probably feel a bit down. If you think of all the things that are going pretty well, you probably will feel more optimistic. So thought and feeling are connected. So seeing that is a key thing, and knowing that you can change and reframe your thinking, that's useful. And again, you can, if you're feeling a bit nervous about a performance, you can refer to your previous successes and knowing that you have what it takes and that you can pull it off. And another point is feelings and thoughts. I refer to that as a presentation of your natural intelligence showing up. And I did a whole solo cast on that, using your natural intelligence. It's GGP Groove Guru podcast number 8, if you want to check that one out. And it's about doing the work required, because we can see anxiety as an emotion of growth, that if we tune into that, we can realize the areas to level up to the point that anxiety doesn't need to surface. And again, I've given the example of, in that natural intelligence podcast, about a specific case where I did that, where I basically did the work until essentially I outworked my self-doubt to the point that anxiety, the feeling and the thoughts, it no longer needed to show up, because I tuned in, I got the message, I did the work required. And again, action is key, and just do it. There's much wisdom in that slogan, that slogan by Nike. Another one is, how do you take away fear about performing? Because sometimes we can get a bit, you've got that, again, fear. It's like an energy in your body about an upcoming performance. It could be a talk that you've got to do. And another thing, and something that relates to what we've said but puts a new angle on it, is a great strategy. How do you take away fear about performing? Is you practice what you've got to perform until it's boring. Because if you could do it like, oh, okay, of course I can do this, and do the repetitions, it takes away the fear. It takes away the self-doubt, any self-doubt that you might have. It's like if you are asked to do a talk on world peace and the future of humanity depends on it, how's this going to go? It can seem like a daunting task, but whatever it is, if you're talking about that, or if you've got some kind of presentation to do, if you practice it until you're at the point of you can reel it off like you would say the alphabet, then it just doesn't exist as such a big deal anymore. It's like if you're asked, can you say the alphabet? You're probably not going to say, well, maybe, I hope so. Again, hope, it's not a strategy. But you probably say, of course I can. It's the alphabet. And the point is, if you've got something to do, a talk, a presentation, a performance to give, if you just do the work and practice until it becomes, boring as an example, then it takes away that fear. So I'm not saying, be bored in what you do. It's about repetition to know that you can show up and ace it and be the best you. Okay. So some points. Summarizing, bringing this back home, a few of the things we looked at, preparation is key. An athlete doesn't train for the event at the event. They train beforehand, so they show up to the event to go for gold, so to speak. Clarity, being aware of what you are to do, getting the material, listening to it, charting all it, practicing it by doing the work, being focused in the process of that, eliminating distractions, turning your phone off. And the more you do that and practice with focus and clarity, confidence comes as a byproduct of that, of taking action. There's a reasoned confidence that when you see yourself doing something successfully, you can do it. And that confidence is a feeling of that. And you're much calmer. And when you're calm, you have this natural confidence that dovetails with doing the work. Again, ensuring your equipment's right is absolutely key. The tools that you have to express yourself, reflecting on your roles and responsibilities, just doing that high-level checklist can be really useful. And having that right attitude. And we'll finish up on a quote that surfaced from, it's a Jim Rohn, the personal development and well-known speaker, which is about that gratitude in the process of doing what you do, which it's be grateful for what you have in the process of moving towards what it is that you want. It ties in with patting yourself on the back along the way, like praising your accomplishments. If you've got a mountain of songs to learn, then it can take a while to do that, especially if you want to memorize them all and get to that level of in the zone, unconscious competence. And practicing and praising yourself, like say in one day you learned 5 songs or even just one song. Go, yay, nice one, awesome, I got this. And those reframes along the way, celebrating your wins. Again, it shows you seeing you as someone who is winning, as someone who is creating successes. And the more you do that deliberately and consistently, and you can make a routine out of it, it's a great way to set yourself up to win when it comes to preparing for presentations, preparing for tours or other performances you are in the position to do. So, final little bonus tip for additional pointers and tips on practicing, performing. I have a free mini course on this, which relates to working as a musician and also applies to other areas of your life you want to improve and enhance your practice of. And that's on my website, front page of windsordrums.com. So check that one out if you fancy. So there we have it. How I prepare for a tour, another Groove Guru podcast solo cast. Thanks for watching, checking this out. Please like, subscribe, recommend, and before you know it, I'll be back with more episodes of the Groove Guru podcast.